Welcome back. We're now going to talk about antitrust law and specifically the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. As we said, between 1860 and 1890, the Standard Oil Company had become dominant, had 90% of the market by 1890. And it had done so in ways that were fair, meaning it produced better products, standard products. John D. Rockefeller had lowered the price for consumers, but it also had done so in ways that many people considered unfair. It had intimidated competitors. It had done predatory pricing by undercutting them. It had made secret deals with distributors. It had done things to prevent competition. So in 1890, Republican Ohio Senator John Sherman proposes a Sherman Antitrust Act, which passes almost unanimously. Democrats and Republicans in 1890, almost all except for one in the House or Senate, vote for it. And it's somewhat vague in its provisions. It just basically says if you create a trust, if you pull companies together and you create a big old conglomerate, and it's in restraint of trade, it's declared to be illegal. In other words, it was using the Commerce Clause of the Constitution, which says that Congress has a right to regulate interstate commerce. And up until then, people who were fighting Standard Oil had to sue state by state. In Pennsylvania, Ohio, it was finally decided, okay, we need a national law on antitrust. There are two concepts in the Sherman Antitrust Act. One is that if you hurt the consumer, that's bad. The other is if you hurt competition, that's bad. In other words, you might do something that's fine to consumers. It might lower prices for consumers. But if you try unfairly to put other people out of business or to stop them from entering the business in order to get a monopoly or to protect a monopoly, then that's wrong. And the thought was that even if it doesn't directly harm consumers right away, if you end competition or you prevent competition or new entry into the market, that's just bad for the economy. It means people can't start businesses, and eventually the monopolists will be able to have total pricing power. So you want to have a lot of competition just for the sake of free market competition and for the sake of people being able to start businesses. Those are the two pillars that were originally part of the concept. They also tried to make a distinction between good monopolies and bad monopolies. There was nothing wrong with earning a monopoly fair and square by doing something better than your competitors, by making better oil products, making products more efficiently or cheaper. Just like Google gets a monopoly when there are 20 other search engines, but it makes a better one, so it becomes dominant in the market. Nothing illegal about that. It is illegal, though, to engage in certain practices to protect or to gain a monopoly. In other words, to do it not fair and square by making a better product, but by making secret deals or tying or bundling things. And so they were making a distinction, or trying to, between good monopolies and bad monopolies. By the way, it takes quite a while. It's many years later, in 1914, that another act is passed to try to define some of these concepts, proposed by an Alabama congressman named Henry Clayton Jr. It's the Clayton Antitrust Act, and it has some of the provisions that spell out what's a bad thing you can do. One is price discrimination. In other words, if you give certain people better prices than others, or you give them a better deal, if you do that in order to eliminate competitors. Another is exclusive dealing, saying if you buy from me, you buy my product, you want my product, we don't allow you to deal with any of our competitors. If that's done in order to reduce competition, that's considered illegal. Also tying something. In other words, saying if you want to buy my shoes, you got to also buy my t-shirts, even if the people don't want the t-shirts, and even if that's done to try to put a t-shirt maker out of business. You can see that some today where Google bundles and ties certain things to its products, as does Microsoft. And that we'll see later on was at the heart of a antitrust case we'll look at later, the US v. Microsoft, in which Microsoft said, if you're going to buy our products, you're also going to have to use our browser. And Netscape, which is then a browser company, said illegal tying. You can't tie things together. And also, it prevented mergers and acquisitions that were considered to be in restraint of trade. So those were the foundations of the law, which is earn a monopoly fair and square by making a better product. But there are certain things you can't do, either to gain a monopoly or to protect a monopoly once you have it. Thanks.